Audrey Miller,
Here.
Rob Paris,
Here.
Keith Diaz,
Here.
Drew Mercy,
Here.
Frank Donato, George Lane,
Here. Here.
General Manager Matt Knudsen,
Here.
General Counsel Jim Markman,
Here.
and Angel Fitzpatrick present for Holly Hughes.
Thank you much. The next order, item number 4, voluntary public roll call. So we always like to hear from those who have the opportunity to listen in on the meetings. So, if you're on there, you'd like to identify yourself, we'd like to hear.
John Dino, Palmdale Water District.
Yeah, welcome much. Thank you.
Julie Kyle.
And Julie, hello. Glad you're on.
Hi, Mr. Lane.
White Fence 3, Jack Cephas.
Hey, Jack, good to hear from you.
You too.
Roseman News is here, George, and members of the board. This is John Joyce reporting.
We always appreciate the news, the articles you do on AVEC.
Thank you.
Okay, that'll bring us on to number 5, public comments. Does anybody wish to address the board? The item's not on the agenda. Now's the opportunity to do so. Item number 6, adoption of agenda. I think we all had an opportunity to review the agenda. And so if there's no questions, a motion would be in order.
Mr. President, I'll move on adopting the agenda.
Mr. President, I'll second that motion.
Motion second, Dr. Miller and Dr. Paris. If there's no further questions, we'll have to have a roll call vote. So you might have to remind me of that, Angel.
Okay, I will. Director Van Dam,
Yes.
Director Miller,
Yes.
Director Paris,
Yes.
Director Diaz,
Yes.
Director Mercy,
Yes.
Director Donato, and President Lane.
Yes. Thank you. Motion carried. That'll bring us on to item number 7, consent calendar. And we have 2 items on there that approve the minutes of August 22nd and a resolution regarding annexation of the Illy or LAFCO.
Mr. President, I'll move approval of the consent calendar.
Second, Van Dam.
Okay, is there any further discussion on those? If not, Madam Secretary.
Director Van Dam,
Yes.
Director Miller,
Yes.
Director Paris,
Yes.
Director Diaz,
Yes.
Director Mercy,
Yes.
Director Donato, Director Lane.
Yes. Motion carried. Thank you. That'll bring us on to new business. We're going to have a presentation from Wells Fargo regarding our market securities. And it's been a bit, but John, do you want to introduce our Wells Fargo representative?
Yeah, good evening, President Lane and directors. This evening we have John Williams, who is with Wells Fargo Market Securities, and he's here. Included in our packet is a presentation that John is going to go through this evening. And at this time, invite John up to the podium and he can walk through the presentation. So, thank you, John.
Welcome.
Thank you, Mr. President, the board, and staff for having me. So I was asked to give a brief update of the markets and the Avek portfolio, and that's what we're going to do. I'll start briefly talking about the services that I do provide for the district. All views and opinions, of course, are my own. I do not stand and represent Wells Fargo and Wells Fargo's opinions and advice, but I do work for Wells Fargo. I've been with Wells Fargo now for 21 years, and all dedicated to investing for public entities.
Where are you located?
San Francisco. My office is in San Francisco. So Wells Fargo Securities is our corporate and investment banking division. So we have a wide variety of different investment solutions for our customers. We provide fully liquid money market fund options, certificates of deposits, U.S. Treasuries, agencies. California state code dictates what special districts, cities, and counties can invest in. And of course, that's what we're following. The division that I work in is completely dedicated to California public entities. We have a 13-person strategy team that's behind me to help me with this presentation, help our clients strategize. We help with investment policy support, updating the policy over time, creating a strategy, and implementing that strategy over time. My job is educating our clients, providing market intelligence, creating an investment strategy, deploying that investment strategy, and then, of course, maintaining the portfolio over time. We provide economics and strategy, two different distinct services. We have a very robust economics team, and then the 13-person strategy team dedicated to 5 years and in. So California Investment Code allows investors public entities to invest 5 years and less. So we have a 13-person team dedicated to that market. We also have long strategists as well, but that's not the type of investor we are. We have three main goals: safety of principal, liquidity, and yield. And that's what we're trying to achieve for the district. So we work with staff on a daily, weekly, and monthly basis, trying to understand the cash flows of the district and then investing it per policy. Let's jump into any questions there before I jump into the markets update. So a quick snapshot. Here's all the leading indicators. These are the major headline news that you'll hear about the economy. You've got GDP currently at a 2.1%. You've got inflation around 4%. There's a variety of different inflation metrics that we use. Core CPI is at 4.3%. It's down from the highs of roughly 6.4, now currently 4.3. We'll talk about what the Federal Reserve is doing, what the plan is going forward, and of course, it's all around trying to lower that inflation rate. You've got September non-farm payrolls, new jobs, 336,000, which is extremely strong and has remained so over the last year or two, and unemployment at 3.8%. What I want to do is to take a quick look at the last historic rate hikes. So we went back all the way to the mid-'80s and graphed out the Federal Reserve interest rate hikes to show that every rate hike is different. This most current one, starting in 2022 to this year, we've moved up 525 basis points, which is represented in that, call it that first line that you see, the steepest, most dramatic of all rate hikes going back from the 80s. And of course, we had inflation close to a 9% at the highs. And so the Federal Reserve moved quickly and increased rates and is still currently increasing. I would say we're in the later stages of the rate hike. The market's anticipating one, maybe two more, and pausing thereafter. But you can see there's a difference in this market and how interest rates change and why the Federal Reserve does what it does. It's based upon that economic news. What you're going to see here is those federal rate hikes, which is represented in the dark blue, overlapped with the inflation CPI rate itself. And you can see the circles. The circles are highlighting when inflation peaked, fell, and then peaked again, right? And that's what the Federal Reserve is trying to prevent. They're trying to prevent a second increase. Right now, the far right-hand corner of this graph, you can see CPI. This is core CPI dropping. You can see the Federal Reserve hikes, and it's moving in the right direction. But the reason why they haven't fully paused or even started lowering rates is because they're still not at that 2% target rate. And this is showing that 2% target rate. We're still 200 basis points off of where the Federal Reserve wants to be, right? So many say that we're at the end of that rate hike cycle. I agree with that, but I still think it's going to be higher rates for a longer period of time, because until we see core CPI drop to a 2% rate, I don't see the Federal Reserve decreasing rates anytime soon. GDP is still relatively strong. It is falling or softening throughout the world. You've got China and the Eurozone on the two bottom graphs, and then the United States GDP on the upper portion, with the Wells Fargo economist predictions throughout 2023 and 2024. You can see there's been some, call it peaks and valleys in that GDP, and it's been relatively flat over the last year. Here, what we're showing is the 3-month Treasury bill, which is represented in the dark blue line, the 10-year Treasury note in the gray line, and then the shade of blue is the difference or the spread between those two. In November of last year, it inverted to where short-term rates moved higher compared to long-term 10-year Treasury rates. And that's typically the first signs of a recession to come. And it's typically 18 to 24 months after that inversion. So we're roughly 11 months from that conversion of short-term rates moving higher compared to a 10-year Treasury note. So anywhere in the next 3 to 12 months, the bond market is projecting a recession. What I wanted to do is show you where public entities are finding value for investments, right? So on a daily basis, my job is to find investments that fit your cash flows, fit your policy, and then give suggestions of strategy. So on the top chart here, we've got short-term notes. That's anywhere from 12 months and less. The line represents treasury bills. Anything higher than a treasury bill is considered value over that treasury. You can see tier 1 and tier 2 commercial paper provides the highest yield possible in this current rate environment, with agencies out in the longer end providing a higher rate of return. On the bottom chart, you're seeing 2 to 5 years there. So these are California State Code allows 5 years and less. Here we have the value between a treasury, which is the solid line, compared to agency bullets, AA corporate notes, single A corporate notes, and then callable agencies. Callable agencies is represented in that shadow of dots. Okay, so that's where you're providing or you're seeing the biggest yield pickup. Of course, buying a callable security, the risk there is the bond gets called away from us and we have to reinvest at a lower rate. So we do our best to diversify in bullets as well as callable securities. I wanted to take a longer approach or a look back at the 2-year Treasury note to see where we are with interest rates. So this goes back the last 5 years. If you were to buy a 2-year Treasury, anywhere on this chart is the yield that you would receive at that time. You can see we're over the last 5 years, we're at the all-time highs for this period of time in the 5% range. Okay, you can see October of 2019. Shortly thereafter, we had COVID. Rates went to 0, stayed at 0 all the way to roughly October 21, and then increased significantly thereafter. This tells us a story of buying longer-term securities at these current high rates. Looking at a 5-year security, so this is over the last 5 years, buying a 5-year Treasury note, what would your yield be? Very similar to a 2-year note. You can see the flat or the low yield. I remember selling 5-year securities at 50 basis points, 0.5, so 0.5% for 5 years. We're now at 5.5%, even 6%. So this gives us some confidence of buying longer-term securities because we're at all-time highs and holding that for as long as possible. Any questions?
Is that strategy what hurt a lot of the banks earlier in the year?
Well, that strategy hurts the banks based upon the dollar price of those securities, right? So I think you're probably Silicon Valley Bank, right? was one of those banks. They purchased treasuries and they purchased billions of dollars of treasuries. If they held those treasuries to maturity, there would have been no loss of principal. But because news broke that they had significant, call it portfolio losses, purely on dollar price, not on holding it to maturity, but if they were to sell, and they weren't forced to sell, there was a run on the banks, run on Silicon Valley. So as deposits leave the system, it only impacts them in a way that they have to now sell those securities in order to pay back depositors.
Were they following the state guidelines, the government guidelines?
No, they're a bank, so they don't have to follow California State Code for Investments. They do have their own banking regulations, which allows them to buy securities. But the problem wasn't holding treasuries. The problem was the run on the bank, everybody withdrawing money, right? That, call it panic within the banking system, can occur at any time, whether they're holding treasuries or not holding treasuries. But that was the motivation for individuals to pull money out of Silicon Valley Bank. Had they not done that, the bank would have been able to hold the securities to maturity, not receive any losses at all in their portfolio. But they were forced to sell because of people withdrawing money. So we're going to take just 3 slides here to go over the portfolio itself. Okay. Here you've got a variety of different metrics that we look at. So the upper left-hand side portfolio snapshot, the number of securities, 66 securities. We have a laddered, and we'll talk about what maturities we actually do have for the portfolio. Roughly 80 million currently invested in fixed income securities. The current book yield is at a 4.15%. The 12-month projected cash flows, roughly $58 million. So the majority of the money is coming due within 12 months. So very short portfolio. Good when you're able to take lower yielding securities, have it mature, and reinvest at higher rates, right? Also a good time now to perhaps look at longer term securities if there's cash that does not need to be used for daily operations. Now would be a good time to extend it out longer simply because we're at all-time highs. You can see the coupon structure in the pie chart in the middle, broken out between fixed income securities in a variety of different step up or a floating type of note, all guaranteed rate of return and principal if held to maturity. Again, the portfolio allocation, I can't see it from this distance, but I do know we have agencies, certificates of deposits, we've got money market funds, and corporate notes. The bottom cash flow projections shows us over time how much money is coming due. And you'll see that a little better here in this cash flow projections. So here you see the date of which an event is going to occur. It's interest payment column, a potential call, maturities, the runoff yield, the percent of whatever is maturing, what is that yield of that security or group of securities that's maturing, the monthly total, and the cumulative total for the portfolio. And you can see the bulk of the portfolio is all 2 years and less. Any questions there? So when we're looking at strategy and we're looking at trying to find investment ideas, you'll see certain months where there's 0 in the maturity. So staff and I are looking at current inventories, what's available in the market, and we're trying to find something in August of 2024 or January of 2025. So the district always has money coming due on a regular basis to either spend or to reinvest at hopefully higher rates. Here's the historical performance. So we started running this in May. You can see, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 6th column over is the average book yield. Looks like in May we were at a 349. And then last run, which was just in September, the end of September, we're at a 415, so the yield is increasing. Everything new that we're investing in is in the 5 to 6% range. Yeah. Red column. Sure, gains and losses. Yep. So that is so when you buy a security at a certain dollar price, right? That could be at par, which is 100. It could be at 99. It could be at a 101. If you hold it to maturity, you receive back your principal and all of your interest. If you were to sell your securities before the maturity date, there's either going to be a gain or loss based upon the dollar price that you paid. There is an inverse relationship between yield and dollar price, right? So if you think about it, the higher the yield, the lower the dollar price. You think about it reversely there, the lower something costs, the more benefit, the more yield you're going to receive off of that, whether it's a car, a t-shirt, a hat, whatever it may be. An investment's the same thing. If I buy it at the lowest possible price, that's going to give me the highest rate of return or the highest benefit over it, right? So as interest rates are going higher, the dollar price of all the other securities are going lower. It's just pure math. But knowing that if we hold those securities, they all mature back at par, which is 100. Right? So this report is simply showing you the potential. If you were to sell the entire portfolio on September 30th, there would be a loss in that portfolio. But to avoid that, simply don't sell your securities, hold it to maturity, and then there will be no loss.
I mean, everything looks pretty good with AVAC. Is that typical of most public agencies?
Yeah, state code really restricts what we can and can't buy. So everything that we're offering per state code is going to either be United States Treasuries, which are guaranteed by the U.S., or its agencies, Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, which have a direct or an implied backing of the United States government. You guys are purchasing brokered CDs, which are banks across the country. We're buying them in increments of $250,000, which means the entire amount in brokered CDs are FDIC insured. And we also do participate in the corporate note market, which is the largest and safest corporations. So because of state code and your investment policy, hold it to maturity, and we won't receive any gains, we won't receive any losses in the portfolio.
Could you talk, just in your opinion, what caused this inflation, this high inflation in the last few years?
COVID was to blame on this one. The entire economy, the world economy shut down, right? And
was there too much money put into the economy?
No, it wasn't too much money. It was just the lack of manufacturing, right? Whether it was cars, whether it was farming, whether it was chips in Asia coming over to the United States, right? So all of that delayed the normal cycle of products. And when we went back into society, there was a demand there to buy goods, and those goods weren't there to purchase, so price goes up. And now that we've moved past, call it COVID, and we're seeing inflation, we're seeing manufacturing fully up to speed again, no problem buying toilet paper, so therefore the prices are falling again.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Is there any other questions from directors or staff?
Perfect. Well, thank you for the time.
We appreciate it.
Yeah.
And can you come back and visit us occasionally?
Sure, whenever needed.
But years ago, we used to hear from Wells Fargo pretty regularly.
Yeah.
And it's been, I don't know how long it's been, but we'd appreciate it a few times a year.
Yeah, we're happy to do it whenever needed. The nice thing about fixed income portfolios, they're pretty simple. They're plug and play in the sense that when you buy the security, you're holding it to maturity. So there's oftentimes not a lot of change, right? It's more about your cash flows. So as your cash flows change, that's going to have the biggest impact on the investment portfolio.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, go ahead.
What are we paying Wells Fargo for the service?
Sure, how we get paid is a good question. So zero, we don't have a management fee. So there's two ways of purchasing fixed income securities. You can hire a money manager, and that money manager will charge you a fee, and they end up going to broker dealers to buy securities, right? So I work under the Wells Fargo Securities Broker Dealer Division. So there's two ways of how Wells Fargo gets paid, and it's not, call it at the expense of you, it's at the expense of the issuers. So there's banks all over the nation. Those banks are looking for deposit dollars. We create those securities for them. We create the certificate of deposit. Now, when we give that bank $5 million, we don't want it to be Wells Fargo's $5 million. We like to find investors to hold that, right? So when Wells does also purchase CDs, so Wells Fargo has its own treasury portfolio just like you, and Wells Fargo's buying Yankee CDs, commercial paper treasuries for its own portfolio. But me representing you, we're creating these securities, and those issuers pay Wells Fargo an underwriting fee, right? So just like when Avek went out and issued your own bonds, you're paying the underwriter a fee, right? And Wells Fargo does that. We create those securities. Once those securities are created, they move into what's called the secondary market. And that's the Wall Street trader who is buying securities and selling securities. They have a P&L, a profit and loss. Sometimes they lose money, sometimes they make money. So those are the two ways that Wells Fargo makes money. The benefit to you all is really a benefit to us. Wells Fargo is we need public funds, and we need managed funds. So we work directly with money managers too. So if you hired a money manager, they would buy securities from us. By buying it directly, the district is saving by not paying that management fee. But Wells gets paid either way by creating those securities or actively trading them in the market.
Even on the CD?
Yeah, even on the CD. So those banks, there's is what's called an underwriting fee, and that goes to Wells Fargo. So whether Avek buys it or some other district buys it, Wells Fargo will still get paid. And that's a service that we're providing to those banks is to create deposits for that bank.
Good question, Rob. Good answer. Yeah. Do you get down to Southern California occasionally, another business?
Yep. So I cover roughly. So I have a business partner. His name is Justin Lewis. We cover roughly 150 California public entities all throughout the state, from San Diego all the way up north.
But you're down here personally, occasionally.
Occasionally, fewer and fewer. Most everything now is either email or on the phone. Zoom has really been beneficial to get in front of a lot of people without having to hit the road. So my travel is a lot lighter since COVID. Yeah.
Is it possible to maybe hear from you every quarterly or every 4 months, something like that?
We can discuss it with staff and see what's needed. Zoom, I'm always available via Zoom. In person's a little difficult. So when I am away from the desk, right, I'm traveling, and I've got customers who want to buy investments, and it's hard to be buying investments and also presenting to all of our districts. So absolutely, I encourage you, my contact information is at the beginning of the slide. You can call me at any time. We can set up Zoom calls. I can work with staff to find dates that work best. But if it works.
Is there people in Southern California who do the same thing you do?
We do have an office in LA. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Most of them work with FI, so financial institutions, so banks, money managers, insurance companies. So we have a specialty within, call it Wells Fargo Securities. So our office was originally in Sacramento. We had a 4-person team that was dedicated only to California public entities throughout California. The LA office works with a lot of corporations and financial institutions. So there is similarities, but there is a complete difference in investment approach and style, investing California code versus a corporate policy.
Okay, thank you. Is there any other questions?
Thank you, John.
Yeah, thank you much.
Appreciate it. Thanks for coming.
Okay, that'll bring us down to item number B, the Finance Committee. Director Donato, I don't believe is with us today.
Yeah, President Lane, it does look like Frank is on the line now.
Okay, yeah, Frank? Director Donato?
Frank, you'll need to unmute yourself.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah, sorry I was late. Can Matt or George go ahead and finish the finance report? Thank you.
Yes, yeah, thank you. Item number B1, the first item on the Finance Committee, is regarding the check register. And, that's in the agenda. And I think anybody's had a chance to review that. And so if there's any new questions, or Matt, would you like
Yeah.
to?
Yeah, just real quickly. Good evening. On page 48 of your packet, also on the screen if you want to advance. Yeah. Oh, that's okay. On page 48 of the packet is the beginning of the checklist. As typical, we went through this in detail with the Finance Committee last week. They had numerous questions on various items, but nothing out of the normal jumped out. We have our item number 1, which is our monthly payment to DWR for our fixed state water project cost of just over or just under 1.6 million. So everything else is pretty much in line, but be happy to answer any questions you may have.
If everybody's had a chance to review it, if there's no further questions, motion would be in order. Item 8B1.
Mr. President, I'll move on 8B1.
Motion by Director Miller. Need a second?
Van Dam, second.
Second by Director Van Dam. Okay, if there's no further discussion, Madam Secretary?
Director Van Dam,
Yes.
Director Miller,
Yes.
Director Paris,
Yes.
Director Dias,
Yes.
Director Mercy,
Yes.
Director Donato,
Yes.
President Lane.
Yes. Motion carried. Yeah, thank you. That'll bring us down. The next order of business or Treasurer's Report, page 77. So Teresa, we'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, President Lane. Good evening, directors. This is the Treasurer's Report for the month of September. The average yield to maturity for the total portfolio was 3.897%, which was up 0.153% from the prior month. Average days to maturity for the total portfolio was 262 days, or approximately 9 months. And total cash and investments at September 30th was $120.2 million, which was up $2.5 million from the prior month. And I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Looks pretty good.
That's
I
good
think Teresa's been doing an excellent job.
with John's help.
We know. It's a team.
It's a
Yeah.
team.
Hey, is there any questions from Teresa? The motion would be in order to accept.
Thank you.
Thanks, Teresa.
Mr. President, I'll move on 8B2.
And Director Miller.
All second. Mercy.
And Director Mercy, second. If there's no further discussion, Madam Secretary?
Director Van Dam,
Yes.
Director Miller,
Yes.
Director Paris,
Yes.
Director Dias,
Yes.
Director Mercy,
Yes.
Director Donato,
Yes.
and President Lane.
Yes, motion carried. That'll bring us down to, we'll go to page 93, Water Master and Groundwater Committee. In Director Paris is, would you want to start?
Sure, Mr. President, I will turn it over to
Okay,
Matt.
Matt.
All right. Thank you, Director Paris. Good evening again. So, as you know, we have the monthly Water Master meeting tomorrow at 10 a.m. here at Avek and also on Zoom. So this is our opportunity to go through the agenda for tomorrow and for the Avek board to provide direction to our representative. And tomorrow, I believe Director Paris is going to be present for that meeting. So I wanted to go hit the highlights of tomorrow's meeting, make sure we have a concurrence on direction. The agenda for tomorrow's meeting is on page 96 of your board packet, but I've got a couple slides here that Angel put together to highlight the items that we felt were important on the agenda. The first one is a continuation of a discussion by the Water Master Board on amending the rules and regulations to do away with the 5-0 vote on certain situations. As you know, a few months ago, we had a situation come up where both Director Paris and myself had to recuse ourselves from the vote, which being that there was only 4 directors voting on the particular item, motion did not pass. So there was a proposal or an inquiry by some of the board members of the Water Master to look at amending the rules and regulations to account for those situations. That was the only situation over the last 7 years of the Water Master. Everything else we've been able to work through as a board to get that 5-0 vote requirement. So it's been on the agenda the last few months and keeps getting, the language keeps tweaking a little bit here and there. The advisory committee did meet last week, and the outcome of the advisory committee was a majority of the advisory committees recommend to keep the rules and regs the same as it is now. Keep the 5-0 vote requirement and not approve this amendment at this time. So,
Matt, do you know what the vote was in the advisory committee on that?
oh, it was, I think there were two that voted in favor of this proposal. The rest want to keep it the same. I don't know what the number was, but it was probably 8, in the neighborhood of 8-2.
It'll be in their report.
Yeah, it'll be in the report for tomorrow.
Do we need a vote on that or just a consensus?
Well, I think we want to give consensus to Director Paris on which way to go tomorrow on this, or at least be open to it, discuss, hearing what the discussion is tomorrow and then deciding.
And my discussion on it, I would recommend we vote yes on it. It was kind of my recommendation that we move forward and look at that. I've been onset of the Water Master Board, even before the adjudication was finalized, I had recommended not to do a 5-0 vote, but a 5-0 vote, as we've all seen, we've been successful in getting them almost always, but there is always that situation that this may have only come up once in 7 years, but it's also possible that one member may just not make it to a meeting, an alternate may not be present, and now we spend thousands and thousands of dollars for a meeting that we can't conduct business at. So my recommendation is that we do vote for the 4-0 under the circumstances as shown in the rules and regulations.
Okay, is there any other directors?
Yeah, I recommend we keep it to 5-0. I think that it was drafted that way by Judge Kumar and the Water Master.
It was actually drafted by the multitude of attorneys we had on it. And I've never been shy about saying it. Water attorneys are, they're neck and neck on family law attorneys. Whenever they can stir up chaos, they can make more money. And a 5-0 vote allows that to happen. And I think that's why the attorneys pushed to have that provision in there. And there was a lot of mistrust between public water providers, Avek, landowners at that time. And I think over 7 years, we've built up a lot more trust, and at least we should test the waters now for it. And I think we as a lead agency should be supporting a move like this.
I think we stick with what the advisory board recommended and keep it to 5-0. And I think you guys are doing a great job on getting along after 7 years and only having one dispute.
I agree. I agree with you.
A pretty good job.
Yeah, I agree with you that we've worked really hard to build consensus, but Frank, I think, gets it right when he says the problem with a 5-0 vote is oftentimes the cost of building consensus is we have to put things over 2, 3, 4 meetings, and that's very expensive for the Water Master. And the way the Water Master Board is structured, you have 2 landowners, you have 2 public water suppliers, LA County is one, and then the combination Kathy McLaren represents the rest of the public water providers, and then you have Avek. So at any, even with a 4-0 vote or 4-1 vote, all groups within the adjudication are represented within that vote.
The advisory group, Rob, they represent a lot of interest in the valley. And right now we're undergoing some potential changes with the water master. At least it's not settled exactly what it's going to be next year. And would you agreeable to keep the 5-0 vote and we'll look at it when things are settled, maybe the first part of the year or sometime next year?
Yeah, sure. I'm always here to build consensus. I mean,
I like that recommendation, George. Maybe we keep it this year and then look at it again next year.
Look at it.
A lot of the farmers have got a hold of the advisory board, recommended that we try to keep it the same.
Yeah,
and they are the ones paying the assessments.
As you know, Gary, I have a great respect for the advisory committee and that board. But as I've always said in the meetings, they are an advisory board. They're not the board.
Right.
And so we listen to their recommendations. We not only listen, we really are fortunate to have such a good group within the advisory board, but they are an advisory board. And
as we spoke of, this can be looked at down the road.
Of course, George.
And so if that's agreeable with
and if
you
that's
and the board.
Yeah, if that's a consensus of the board, as chairman, I can just ask that we table this or put it off until after the first of the year when we have some other issues resolved.
Okay, if that's agreeable to the board, I don't think we'll have a vote as long as we don't hear an objection.
I did have one question because the wording in this changed. So the wording that changed in here, from what I can remember, is in the middle it says the board member shall state on record the precise nature of the basis of their abstention or recusal. What was the thought process behind that?
Yeah, it's a good point that you recognize that, Director Miller. So that was language suggested at just before the last Water Master Board meeting. One of the attorneys for one of the parties suggested to add that language to make sure that the public knows why both the primary and alternate board members are recusing themselves. So that, they have to publicly state a reason why, just so somebody can't just bow out without stating a reason why they have to recuse themselves.
Okay, so this didn't change from the last meeting.
It did change.
Oh, it did change. Okay.
Yeah, that's new. A new sentence in there added.
Okay.
Yep.
Well,
but it really doesn't change the intent, right?
It would be nice to have a decision on this because one party was affected by the tabling over several months plus the cost to the water master. However, just to settle things down for the rest of the year, we can just table it right now.
Okay.
Yeah. I don't mind this wording.
Yeah, I don't either. I think it's a move in the right direction, but I certainly understand George's direction.
Okay, so if the board's okay with that approach,
yes,
you're okay with it.
Of course, I'll always follow the board consensus, George.
Yeah, great. Okay. Matt,
I'd like to make a comment. Please go back. This Director Donato. I'm appalled that anybody that abstains that has to give a reason. That's just, to me, unconstitutional. And who makes up these rules? The second thing I'd like to point out is where in the state of California, I'm going to use state of California because that's all I know, is any governmental or any governmental entity that's run that has to do a 5-0 vote. Name me one organization in this state except the AV Watermaster that mandates and their consultants. It's absolutely disgusting when people are talking about breaking the chain because they want it to fit their own life. I brought it up, and Rob is 100% correct. You guys, nobody was on that thing longer than Rob and myself. We were up there for 16 years and saw exactly how devious these people were to manipulate the attorneys, to manipulate this system. Exactly what Rob said. So people have to go back to the attorney and go back again. And I'm going to tell you, if you don't change this, you guys are going to be paying, you guys, $20+ an acre foot. Because all they're doing is rubbing their hands every time we go. Just think right now, this has got to go back to the board again. And now it's going to be asked to be tabled again. And there are going to be discussions again. So I just want to throw that out. Thank God there was, I would have voted no, because it's unconstitutional of the people that represent us. That'd be like saying it takes a 100% vote to elect anybody. So anyway, and that's what Gavin Newsom's trying to do with Prop 13. He's trying to remove the 2/3 vote to get the simple majority to overturn Prop 13. Okay, I'm not making this up. We're fighting it very hard in the real estate industry, but I'm going to tell you right now, we need to get back to basics as governmental bodies and advisory people. And like Rob said, they're advisory people, and I respect their opinion, but they're not the final decision. That's just it. Thank you very much.
Hey, Rob, Frank, this is Director Van Dam. I've been paying into this for 17 years. How much have you paid into it?
No, I was up there. I flew up there every single week.
Yeah, but how much did you pay into it? Because I paid into it.
How much I pay into it? Yeah, a lot of money.
I paid into it for 17 years, and so did
Yeah, well,
you.
yeah, but you know what? I took my time out, and nobody paid me to do it. I just to go there and fight those guys because Judge Roby wanted us, Avek, to be the water master. Okay, and I asked him, please don't let us do that. Go ahead. What's going on this, Gary, right now is because Rob and myself changed it. They wanted us to be it. And they said, well, and Judge Roby said, if you're not the water master, I'm going to turn over to the director of the state water contractors and have them take it. I said, I don't think that's a good idea either. I said, the best way to do it is
we've had a good discussion. We realize everybody doesn't think the same.
Yeah. So you know what? I mean, exactly. I'm just one vote, okay?
But Frank, we're going to look at it again. I mean, this is not for permanent, but
okay.
We did have the advisory committee, and we're not saying it's going to be permanent, but this is something in motion. We'll see what happens as far as water master, if there's a change or not. So if we're fine, we have a consensus of the board, the door I'm going to follow. We'll go with that. Okay.
Sounds
Matt?
good. Yeah, we'll move on. We got a couple more items here. There's been a lot of discussion recently about the Hallmark contract for 2024. And at the last Water Master meeting, there was an ad hoc committee formed to try and negotiate a contract with Hallmark for next year. That committee was comprised of Director Calandry, myself as the alternate, and then Mr. Lamoureux from the advisory committee. So that ad hoc committee's met a couple different times with Hallmark Group. They are going to submit their initial draft proposal to the Water Master Board in closed session tomorrow. The committee thought that it's fair to have that discussion initially with the board members. There'll still be an opportunity to go out and get feedback from the advisory committee after tomorrow's meeting. But so that's the plan on the contract. We'll see where it goes after the closed session discussion tomorrow.
And Matt, you said it, but emphasize that the board board will look at it in closed session, and any recommendations or the next actions would be put on the agenda for open session, and it would be discussed by the advisory committee. We're not trying to take a vote or approve anything without advisory committee input.
Exactly. Yeah, thanks for clarifying. And we put that in the memo that's in the board packet from the ad hoc committee. But really wanted to emphasize that we're not, like Rob said, we're not trying to circumvent the advisory committee. We just wanted to give the board a first shot at it because they're the ones that directed the ad hoc committee to negotiate. So no action will be taken tomorrow regarding the contract. And there is one transfer being considered. Hope I get the name right. It's Meritorena Trust to Gene Wheeler Farms. It's about 3,200 acre feet of carryover water. It's a one-time transfer. So that was recommended by the water master engineer as well as the advisory committee. I think everybody recommended approval of that transfer. So that's the only transfer tomorrow. And then just wanted to mention that at the last water master meeting, the board made a proposal to the Hallmark Group to only accept 50% of what they submitted for Amendment 5 for additional costs. And I think tomorrow the Hallmark Group is going to announce that they have accepted that proposal to accept the 50%. So that's good news. And that is about it. Am I missing anything, Angel? No?
That's it.
Unless you have any other questions. That's all I had.
Okay, we have a consensus, so there's no board order for another board. So, yeah, thank you much, Rob and Matt. Thank you.
Thank you.
The rest of the board also. And that'll bring us on to item number D, regarding Valley State water contractors. And we do have a board order, page 103, and we'll turn that over to Rob Parrish. He's chairman of that committee.
Thank you, Mr. President, and I'll do what I normally do, turn it over. Actually, Peter is going to do this for me. I like to delegate, so this will work out. Thank you, Peter.
Excellent delegation skills in action.
I could do this, but I want to give you the experience.
Much appreciated. Good evening, President Lane, directors. Tonight we have in front of you a resolution to accept the cost share for the USGS the groundwater program. So there's been a program in place for many years. They do over 135 wells. They check them for their levels. Currently, the greatest use of that is through the Antelope Valley Water Master, but it does also serve water agencies in terms of evaluating water levels. If you're exploring putting in a bank, a groundwater bank or something of that nature. So they also do some testing of the water quality. It's also very informative to making those decisions. Currently we share in the cost of that program, and our share is 50% through the Antelope Valley State Water Contractors. And our portion of that as Avek is in proportion to our table A, with the other state water contractors at 85.7%, for a total cost of $30,000 and $30,784. We would need to adopt a resolution accepting that in order for it to be adopted fully and for us to be invoiced by the AV State Water Contractor. And I'm happy to answer any questions you might have on that.
So the total amount, could you say that?
$30,784.
Okay.
Mr. President, I would move approval of Board Order 8D1, which would approve Resolution R2329.
We have motion by Director Parrish.
I'll second.
Director Mercy, we have a second. If there's no further discussion, Madam Secretary.
Director Van Dam. Director Miller.
Yes.
Director Paris.
Yes.
Director Diaz.
Yes.
Director Mercy.
Yes.
Director Donato.
Yes.
And President Lane.
Yes. Motion carried. Now, Rob, I have a question. Yeah, would it be possible if they made a presentation to the AVAC board, or if not, let us know and the directors can go to the
USGS
Yes. Or if not, if we knew about it, we can go to the state water contractors. But I don't know the presentations. They're very interesting.
We need to get the right guy or individual from USGS. We tried that with the water master, and we obviously didn't have the right individual from USGS presenting.
We used to have a really good one, and maybe Frank and Keith remember him, but I know he retired. But he had so many ideas, and it was just a lot more than making presentation about wells. But the guy was excellent.
Yeah, we can definitely have a discussion with USGS and get the right individual to come. I think it'd probably be appropriate at the association. We could do that. Since the association is paying the lion's share of the cost for the program.
Keith and Frank, do you remember that?
Yes, George, I think his name was Peter Martin, if I'm correct.
You mean the guy from USGS?
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, that was it.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah, we can work on that and get a presentation.
We will work harder to vet the next presenter, right?
Yeah, exactly.
You know who would have? It just dawned on me. He was involved with the USGS on the Kennedy Jenks report about 20 years ago, and I would contact Kennedy Jenks because they probably would know how to get a hold of him if he's around.
Yeah, he may be a different department. Good idea.
Yeah.
George, I have an idea that might be more productive than that. I know our water master engineer is working up a model, and we have one of the water master engineers very involved in working up our model for our basin, which relies heavily on the USGS report. And I think it might be a whole lot more productive. One of two things: either have the water master engineer present at a meeting about the USGS report and the model. They do that frequently, but maybe focus more on why we're paying this money for this report, because I think that gives us a lot more information, and then what the model is actually showing for our base and the USGS report contributing to that model. What do you think of that?
I think that's a good idea. Maybe the committee and good work with staff and try to make that happen.
Yeah, I think that'd be easier to do and a lot more productive and time better spent.
Yeah, and that would be at the water master board meeting.
Yeah, we could do it, and then make sure we've invited all the board members to the meeting we're going to do that at.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Remind me to talk to them tomorrow.
Yeah, we'll talk to them tomorrow and
Great. Thank you.
get that for a future item. That's a good suggestion.
Yeah, good idea. Thank you. Okay, if there's nothing further on that item, we'll move on to number 9, the general manager's report. Matt?
Yes, good evening. So I know many of you heard about the Irvine Ranch Water District tour that a few board members took about a week ago with staff. We had directors Van Dam, Miller, and Mercy attend that tour. It was great. They were great hosts to AVAC, and we had representatives from both Irvine Ranch Water District as well as Rosedale Rio Bravo Water Storage District, who Irvine Ranch partners with. So Irvine, as you know, has a water bank up just west of Bakersfield. It's on the map there. You can see it. It's outlined in orange and yellow. The two projects that they have where they're banking water are the Stockdale Ranch, which is in orange, and the Strand Ranch project. So it's just adjacent to what's called the Cross Canal or Cross Valley Canal project that connects the Kern River water with the California State Water Project or the California Aqueduct. So they gave a little presentation. I've stole these slides from that presentation, and then we took a little field trip to the water bank. About the the water bank that we went on tour of, it's about 126,000 acre feet storage and within the aquifer, much like our water storage programs or water banks here in the valley. Total 761 acres. They have a total of 16 recovery wells and canals that pump it back to California Aqueduct and the Cross Valley Canal. As you know, back in 2011, Avek entered into a pilot agreement with Irvine Ranch Water District. It was a 2-for-1 exchange. We put water into their project in 2012, and they returned the water, half the volume to Avek in 2014. And then more recently, we entered into a long-term agreement with Irvine Ranch on a 2-to-1 exchange program. And we're actually taking advantage of this program this year. With all the surplus state water project water that we have, we're banking some water with them. So this was an opportunity for the board and staff to actually see the project that we're banking water in. And on the screen there, you can just see the bullets that highlight the terms of the agreement that we have with them now. So, yes, Director Parrish.
You're going to cover this. How much are you banking here?
So we will, correct me if I'm wrong, Pete, is it 20,000 or 10,000?
10,000.
10,000 acre feet that we're going to deliver with the option to do another 10 in next year.
Yes.
So under that arrangement, if we put 10,000 acre feet in this year, we'll have access to 5,000 acre feet in a future year for dry year water. In any given year, we can recover up to 3,333 acre feet. That's our capacity of recovery capability within this project. Yes.
The agreement maximum storage is 20,000 acre feet?
Correct. In any given year.
Given.
Or no, that's storage. That's total storage volume. I'm sorry.
So is there any thought that we might want to make that larger amount?
That's something we could definitely talk to Irvine about, but right now I think that's the volume that they'd be comfortable with because they have, their own needs within the bank.
Sure. Thanks.
Yep.
Matt, is there several people that bank with them in their water agencies?
Do you remember?
There's at least one more, and I
can't
remember the agency.
Yeah. Yeah, we can check into that.
Well, that's fine.
Yeah. But it's working out good for us. We're taking advantage of it this year, and we'll have that half that volume of what we bank with them for future years. If we ever find ourselves in a situation like we saw in 2021 and 2022. So this time I'll turn it over to John Bozigan, give a brief update on some of the more recent flows at our various facilities.
Thanks, Matt. Good evening, everyone. Not a lot to report. You can see on the screen our treatment plant production, Quartz Hills at 26 MGD, Rosamond's at just over 3, and our East Side plant is at 3. And then District 37 is taking very little this year. They're relying a lot on their wells, as we all know out there. They had a pretty good rainfall, and their aquifer is pretty healthy out there, at least for this year. We are not recovering much water. We're just putting a little bit through the SNP system to keep the line turned over, keep a good residual in that line. The main thing, the most important, I think, on this whole screen is what we're banking. And we're trying to maximize the water, get the water out of the canal, get it in the ground. So we're doing almost 250 acre feet a day out of the West Side Water Bank. East Side Water Bank, as you know, we're letting it dry out. We have to remediate the ponds, so they'll start taking water again. That should be within a few weeks. Upper Amargosa, I'm happy to say, they're still flowing pretty good. They're still flowing about 8.5 acre feet a day. City of Palmdale is doing a very good job managing that. Little Rock Creek is still about 20. And our high desert, where it says off, that just means we're not banking anything for AVAC out there. The metropolitan water is about 100 acre feet a day. So that's going to continue until further notice. We're going to keep maximizing for the rest of the year as much water in the ground as we can. Expect flows at the plants to go down this month. Typically, the weather starts getting cooler, so they'll start going down. But we're going to maximize as I said, the state project water and very little groundwater this year. Happy to answer any questions.
A lot different presentation now than it was last year.
Oh yeah, that's right. Matt takes over and look what happens. It's all good. Anyway, thank you.
Okay, is there any questions from John?
All right.
Thank you, John.
Thanks, John.
I just have one comment. Dwayne might not agree with you. But
True. All right, thanks, John. And at this time, I'll bring Jordan Ray up, our lab manager, to give an update on water quality throughout the agency.
Good evening, board members. So I just wanted to give a quick update on water quality and some activities that the lab's working on as we wrap up the year. So we are finishing 2023 microsystem sampling. We sample from raw and treated water. And so we sample this annually in the warmer months of the year, June through October. This is because microsystems thrive in warmer, stagnant water. So far, the results are none detect. Historically, they're all none detect also. We, at Roseman Water Treatment Plant, we did our annual sampling for regulated constituents. So this was completed on October 11th. And then at Acton, Eastside, and Quartz Hill Water Treatment Plants, the raw aqueduct sampling will take place next month on November 8th. We are also doing extra THM sampling and analysis to verify the effectiveness of our the blending vault at Roseman. And then so far this year, water quality has met state and federal standards. Oops. Sorry. Oh, does this not work? Okay, thank you. So this is a graph of our locational running annual averages for each of our 7 compliance sites in LA and Kern counties. We currently remain below the AVEC goal of 64 parts per billion, and we are well below the MCL of 80. Towards the end of the graph, you can see a slight increase at some of our sites. This is just due to our use of more state water project water. All right, and then some things we're doing in the lab right now. Lab staff analyzed and passed all our annual performance tests for all of our accredited fields of testing, and this is required to maintain our certification. Also, our ELAP annual fees are due the end of the year on December 31st. And then I am working on preparing the 2024 monitoring schedule for agency compliance samples. And that concludes my presentation. Yes.
what are ELAP fees?
It's the Environmental Laboratory Accreditation Program, and that's who gives us our certification so we can perform regulatory samples analysis.
How much are those?
So it depends on the year. So our certificate is good for 2 years, and then annually it's about $5,000. I think it's a little over 5,000. And then every 2 years we have to get an audit, and that we have to outsource that. And last year it cost us $5,000. So depends year to year. They have been increasing the fees recently, so they are thinking of another increase because there's this new TNI regulations and they're losing some labs, so they need to make up for the difference in the fees to support their program.
Thank you very much for the presentation.
Thank you.
Yeah, good job. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you much right there. It's too bad you had to wait through the whole meeting to the conversation. Okay.
You learned some investment strategies.
We're getting close to the end of the meeting.
Yeah, we are. I just got one more slide here just to go over some upcoming events. We have our Water Master meeting tomorrow. I'm going to take a few days off. I'll be gone Thursday through Monday of next week. So I'll be out of the office 3 days, but Peter and the rest of the gang will be here.
That's next week, isn't
it? This Thursday through Monday.
Okay.
So, and then we have a couple holidays coming up, Veterans Day and Thanksgiving. And then the Aqua Conference, if anybody's interested in going, let Holly know ASAP. That's late November down in Indian Wells Valley. So not the Ridgecrest Indian Wells, it's the South Desert. So that's all I have, unless you have any questions. And, you know, we had our grand opening yesterday. It was a big success. And I'm sure you've seen the articles that I'm sending around via email. So a lot of good press coverage of the project.
Yeah, thank you. Good job. Thank you much. Okay, that'll bring us to item number 10, director's reports. Is there any director going to have any reports? Okay, that'll bring us to item number 11, attorney reports.
I have no reports.
Request for future agenda items. In that, we have no closed session, is that correct?
No reason for a closed session today.
Okay. That'll bring us down to item number 14. 15 to adjourn our meeting till November 14th at 5:30. And so, Madam Secretary, if we could have we need a motion.
Yes, a motion.
President, I move we adjourn.
Director Paris,
I'll second that motion.
Director Miller. Okay. You guys are doing a good job. Okay.
Okay, Director Van Dam, Director Miller,
Yes.
Director Paris,
Yes.
Director Diaz,
Yes.
Director Mercy,
Yes.
Director Donato,
Yes.
and President Lane.
Yes. Okay, motion carried. Very well, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Bye, everybody. Happy Halloween.